And so now we direct our thoughts also to the four beings in the sky world. And they direct our thoughts of all of what was put here and a reminder to carry on for future generations and to work with each other as we walk about and to conduct ceremony and gratitude. If we know each other as what the English term is Indigenous peoples or Native Americans or however we're labeled that way, the original people of Mother Earth, Haudenosaunee is what we term our people as, and it includes all of our people of the original peoples of Mother Earth. And so we have our ceremonies to do, and we have our ways of conducting our lives to each other and passing it on to future generations. So the four beings in the sky world direct our thoughts. At sometimes we may drift off in our activities, and it's a reminder that when we put these words out, that we always continue to stay on our path here on Mother Earth so that we can pass it on to future generations. And so, and also at one point in time, this was added into our Thanksgiving address, was these new people came to the forest and we recognized them as being a different kind of people. And we also noticed that they were going to stay, so we received a message through the four messengers, and the message was that these people aren't going away. And so it was a reminder that we keep our ways going strong and maintain who we are at all times, regardless of what they have to offer and how they conduct themselves. And at that time, the four messengers brought us a message here on earth to carry on and live in peace with our new neighbors. And so that was added in after the new people came to our lands. And so we carry that on also because we too know that they're not going away. And so we put that in there as a form of gratitude too, also to carry on in peace in our own minds as we walk about here on Mother Earth. And so now we direct our thoughts to Creator, and we acknowledge all the love that He's put down here on earth and all the duties and responsibilities that He shared with what we had just mentioned and more. And also the patience, we acknowledge He has great patience for us as we walk about and learn and carry on. And each and every day is a learning day, and then we pass it on to future generations in our ways. We also acknowledge that from the very beginning in what was put here and to provide for us as we walk about in peace and contentment. As I mentioned earlier, this Onondaga, this Thanksgiving address to all that was put here could go on into the fine details of everything we know as what keeps us people and happy and content as we walk about. And it was cut short due to the clock. So at this time, we kindly and respectfully put our minds together as one and give a great gratitude to our Creator who has provided for us, and that the things that He has put here and the responsibilities of all that is mentioned is still going on so that we can carry on and walk in peace and contentment on Mother Earth. And so we'll let it be that way in our minds. So that was the short translation of the Thanksgiving address that we began, whether the gathering is small or large, we begin with this Thanksgiving as a reminder of our ways and as peoples walking about here on Mother Earth and what to be thankful for at all times. So whether the gathering is large or small, whether it's a meeting of the chiefs, council, or the people, or a social, no matter what the gathering is, this is what we put in our minds. And we kindly and respectfully bundle and roll up all our thoughts of great gratitude, and we'll have it that way in our minds as we conduct what we're here for. And so with that, we'll get into the Haudenosaunee people, which is what's known today as New York State. New York State is in our woods. But prior to New York, this water here. I felt this water when I was giving the Thanksgiving address in the translation when I got to the water. Yawaha. Our creation stories, we hear of them. We heard it mentioned today. At the beginning, we were given all of our ways and procedures and protocols of thanksgiving and acknowledging what was planted here, what was put here for us. And there was a time in the forest of the Haudenosaunee that we began to not pay attention to them. We conducted our way as just free and roaming about. And we became fierce to each other, our neighbors. And we became battling with each other in the forest. We carried our ways on that way quite some time of fighting and war. And at that time we thought that we were entertaining the Creator because we were good at what we were doing. And so we carried on that way from nation to nation all throughout the forest. And in reality we were saddening, making sad the Creator. So He sent a message, Peacemaker's message to us. The Peacemaker's message came over 1,000 years ago about unity. And what we learned from that messenger, that in English terms is called the peacemaker. In English terms, the message he brought was the great law of peace, of unity. And he explained to us that we were not entertaining the Creator by our actions, that we were saddening Him. And so we had to change our ways. And he reminded us of what to be thankful for, what was provided here for us. And so with that, he united us all in the forest with this wampum belt, unity. From the east is the Mohawk Nation, Oneida Nation. In the center is the capital, Onondaga Nation, Cayuga Nation, further to the west, and the Seneca Nation. The Haudenosaunee is the 5 nations. These are the people of what is now where New York State is in our woods. So the Peacemaker brought this message of unity, peace, friendship, and how to live with each other in the forest and share what's there, with the concept of one bowl, one spoon concept. So what's in the forest is in the forest for all of us. None of us will go hungry. The war, the battles were put together, were put aside and buried. Our minds were put together as one so that we can live and walk about on Mother Earth in peace and contentment. It's a long message that would take sometimes 8 days to translate, to reread how it's structured, but to give you a brief explanation of it. Each row of beads represents procedures, protocols, the Thanksgiving address, what you just heard, our ceremonies, our condolences, our raising of chiefs, our laws. The great law of peace is all in here. And so we carry on with our great law of peace today. Traditional chiefs are raised by our clan mothers in the structure that was put to us over 1,000 years ago. And one of the things that we shared with, what the Peacemaker had shared with us, is that the great white roots of peace, the tree of peace was planted at Onondaga. It's a great white pine. And that its roots expand in all 4 directions. And that anybody is welcome to follow the roots of the great tree of peace to seek shelter under it. And so people have all across the East. All across the East, people have come seeking shelter under it, seeking peace is the word. It's hard to put an English translation to it, to the real meaning. Some of it's shortchanged, as we know, in our languages. that English shortchanges the real meaning of it. But peace and contentment is what, when you seek shelter under the great law of peace, is what it is unity, peace, and love, and gratitude for all that's put here on a daily and regular basis. Procedures and protocols are all in these belts of unity, and what they talk about is your fire. Each nation, just like individuals, we all know we have a fire, and we have to protect that fire. So each nation has a fire also. Spiritual fire, political fire, and it's responsibility as peoples to individually protect your own fire. And so as for the council, the Onondaga Council is the capital of the Haudenosaunee. It works in what we shared with the newcomers to the land is a three-bodied government. I guess you'd best translation for it, but we have the elder brothers, the younger brothers, and the fire. Haudenosaunee is Onondaga when it comes to the councils. Each nation has its own separate council fire, has its own separate chiefs, body of government for their people, for their nation. And anything that happens within their nation, it goes to their council. If anything that reaches over and may affect the neighboring nation, it becomes Grand Council issue. And a runner is sent out, which is still done today, with wampum invitation wampum, to come to a meeting of all the chiefs of the Haudenosaunee. If an issue affects just their nation, that's their matters, that stays at their fire. If anything reaches further into the forest, it affects any one of the nations, it affects all of us. And so these procedures are still conducted today. We still have that. We have a government in Haudenosaunee that was put here over 1,000 years ago. We don't accept Bureau of Indian Affairs government procedures, so forth. We have our own. And as I was saying about our fires, when we conduct our daily livelihood, individually we protect our fires. Our heart is our own individual fire. Our heart is passed down through the clan. The clan of that family has their own protection. They protect their own clan, which supports the nation. And the nation has its own protection of the fire. On the political side of it, we have wampum strings that were put down, and they represent our fire in council. These old wampum strings are out at any time there's a meeting. Still goes on today. As individuals, we know what it is to tend to the family, tend to the individual, yourself, your own fire, because we know what happens when that fire goes out. So we have to maintain that unity amongst yourself, amongst your family, your clan, to your nation, to your leader, to your nation, to the Confederacy of the Haudenosaunee. Onondaga Nation is translation for Haudenosaunee is we're the fire keepers. We keep the wampums. Wampums are the fire. The peacemaker brought his message to Onondaga, well, to the Haudenosaunee people. He visited different nations first. And when he went to these nations, as they were roaming about, battling, he asked to visit with the most fierce of their people. He wanted the most fierce of their people, of their nation, each nation. And he passed the message of peace on to them. There's a lot that's going to be left out of this. I'll give you the gist of it, of this great law of peace. And so when it finally assembled, as everybody accepted it, some of our nations refused to at a time, because they said that their neighbors would attack them still if they turned to be peaceful. and they wouldn't accept it unless all of us did. So it took some time, and we all accepted this message of peace. And the peacemaker had this example from each fire. He says, you take one arrow. One arrow is your livelihood, is your food, it's your protection. And he took that one arrow and he broke it. And he took one arrow from each fire and he bundled it. The leader of the forest and the animals, the four-leggeds, is the deer. He took the sinew of the deer and he strung the 5 arrows together with all the procedures and protocols, ceremony, resolutions and meetings and condolences and our ways, and he bundled them in that sinew, and he bound the peace and unity into that bundle of arrows, and he bound that tight, and he showed this bundle of unity is the strength of your people, and this bundle can't be broken. No man can break this bundle. But he also warned us at that time, this bundle can be unwoven by yourself if you let it happen. And he explained about how to not let it happen, which is the Ganohanyo, the thanksgiving between all our minds is to come together as one and be grateful for what's here, and so that we can be at peace and contentment as we walk about, as a reminder what the 4 beings do to direct our thoughts and our minds so that we can be at peace. And so this message was carried on in oral teachings and a reminder through the belts of wampum. The original belt is over 1,000 years old, and we have it at Onondaga. We have the original belt. The flyer that's out here is a picture of that original belt with the Haudenosaunee. And so as we go about and living our lives in peace and contentment, we're all related through our clans. We're all related to all that is put here. The plant life, the animal life, the waters is all our relatives, as we know. And so as we're carrying about in our lives, time goes on, and we got a runner come through the forest to tell us that there's these strange people coming in to the forest. These strange people, they have hands and arms and fingers and ears like us, but they just look different. They look kind of funny, the messenger said, the runner. So we met up with these people. They come up on a boat about 100 years after, 100 or so years after, when they came into Haudenosaunee territory from when they landed, and we had that runner come and tell us that these people in a big funny-looking boat have arrived. We've met up with them in 1600. 1492 is when they came around, somewhere around that year. 1500, 1600 when they came into Haudenosaunee territories, on a different boat. When they came up the river that we call the river that runs both ways. They named it the Hudson River because that was one of the guys' names who, when he was lost, sailed up that way. The river that runs both ways is, the currents are directed by the ocean tide. So when the high tide comes in, the river runs upstream. When the tide goes out, it runs downstream. So it's the river that runs both ways. This ship came up, and these people came out. They were weak, hungry, sad looking. When they got off of that ship, our people seen them coming and tied them to the forest. And in our teachings of how we met and greet these people is how we do with anyone. And of course, you got to remember there's a language barrier here, so it took some time. But one of the first things we noticed when they got their ship tied to the trees and they got off is they pull out this big sword, this big knife, and they start cutting bushes down, make room for them to get off. And right away it threw a negative sign to our people, because those are berry bushes that aren't even ripe yet. Those are berry bushes that we give thanks for. They chase the birds out of the berry bushes to cut them down to make room for their people to get off their boat. So that was the start right away, that we knew that these people don't have a mind of peace. So that was one of the first things that we offered to them, was the good mind of peace. The good mind. The good thoughts. Of course, we fed them right away too. So after time, they made themselves comfortable. They were getting well fed. They were getting shown. Skipping through some of these months to go into some of these years now because of the clock on the wall. So we came up with an agreement, which is to us and to the United States now is the foundation of treaty making. We acknowledged to our people, the Mohawk Nation who first met them, that's the symbolism that we talk about, that they tied their boat to the trees. The next nation in, when they start gathering and we see that they're trapping and hunting and so forth, they're coming into Oneida, which is the next nation in. So now it affects all of us, because in our terminology of our teachings that our old-timers had shared with us, is that it was first tied to the trees, and then tied to the rock, and then tied to the mountain, to the hills. So in our teachings, the Mohawks of the forest on the east, next to them is the Oneidas, the people of the standing stone. Onondaga means the people of the hills. So once their trapping and hunting went further from the Mohawk Nation into the Oneida Nation, it affected another nation, so it had to be brought to Grand Council. And so we summoned a meeting to have an agreement with them on how to live and conduct themselves in the forests of the Haudenosaunee, in the home. The home is what we call it. The forest is our home. Forest is our walls. Sky is our ceiling. Mother Earth is our floor. Mother Earth's veins are the water. We shared this all with them. We shared them how to conduct themselves in our home. We had to come up with an agreement. So we come up with an agreement with them. Gaswenta, Dignity Ohahage, the two paths. In this agreement, it's explained that the newcomers and their ways, their songs, their dance, their language, their foods, their way of life is in their boat. The Unkwehue, which is us, in our canoe. We travel the river of life, side by each, traveling the river of life, not to interfere with one another. If you notice, these don't cross. But once we noticed they were going to stay here on our lands, that they were making structures and they weren't going away, we had to have this agreement with them. You keep your laws, your ways, your religions, and so forth in your boat, and ours will stay in our canoe, but yet we'll travel side by each in the river of life. And this agreement is still in effect because they agreed to it in our ways and in with our laws of how to live and conduct yourself in the forest. procedures and protocols, thanksgivings and acknowledgement. The one bowl, one spoon concept was shared, the procedures and so forth. And so this agreement is called the two-row Gaswenta. The two-row. It's two rows, two paths, living side by side. Not to interfere with each other, but respect where you live and how to conduct yourself. We shared with them as we noticed that they were taking more than their share from the beginning times. We shared with them what's in here also. It's just like most Unkwehui people know, when you go gather medicines, we talk about medicines. In our ways, we talk to the first one we see. And we explain what we're there for and what we're expecting this medicine to do and for who. And we leave it there so it can pass word on to the other medicines of our message of gathering. And then we go get the next ones. And in this way, all of our people know this procedure of gathering and communicating with the medicines. This way we know there's going to be some left for the future generations to come. And this we saw them violating. And it brought up some disturbing feelings amongst us. When you hear about the history books and the names that they called us and so forth, was because we saw them conducting themselves in an inappropriate way to what was provided here for us. And so we also understand that we got to carry on our ways and the instructions in order to maintain who we are, and remind them of this, that this is forever. And in our terms, in our oral teachings of forever, is as long as the sun shines from the east and sets in the west, as long as the grass grows green, and as long as water flows downhill, this agreement will be in effect. Because we noticed that they would be there and they weren't going away. And so we have to conduct ourselves in this way. Your people, your ways, your laws in your boat. Our people, our ways, and our laws in our canoe. But yet we'll travel forever. Peace, friendship, and forever. Yawaha. So as we go along, we live our lives. We're being surrounded now in the forest. There's different people coming in different places of the forest. We understand what I got in my purse here. Onondaga. Yeah, okay. So the years pass, the months go by, the seasons change and so forth. We're still here. Our ceremonies are still going on. Our chiefs are still chosen by the clan mothers in each nation. Our clans are represented at the council fires. Our Grand Council is still summoned in the old way of invitation wampum. And we're not going anywheres.